Pakistan is full of ghost stories. Stories about haunted houses, cursed roads, and spirits that refuse to leave this world. But tonight, we're not talking about the famous ones. Tonight, we're talking about 3 stories that people in Pakistan rarely speak about. Not because they are fake, but because the people who experienced them still get chills when they remember what happened. One story is about a voice coming from an abandoned well. Another is about a locked room where footsteps were heard every single night. And the last story is about a woman on a lonely highway who disappeared from inside a moving truck. These stories were shared by people who claim they experienced them for real. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen carefully, because these are 3 true scary stories from Pakistan that nobody talks about. Story 1: The Voice from the Well. In 2009, a young man named Imran moved with his family to a small village in Punjab. The house they bought was surprisingly cheap. Too cheap. But since the house was large and perfect for their family, they didn't question it too much. The first night passed peacefully. Nothing strange, nothing unusual. But on the second night, something happened. At around 2 a.m., Imran suddenly woke up. At first, he thought he was dreaming, but then he heard it again. Someone whispered his name. Imran. The voice was coming from the corner of the courtyard. Slowly, cautiously, he walked toward the sound, and that's when he noticed something he hadn't paid attention to before. There was an old well in the corner of the yard. It was sealed with stones. As Imran got closer, the voice came again, but this time it was clearly coming from inside the well. Frozen with fear, Imran stepped back. The next morning, he told his father everything. His father assumed it was just imagination, but when Imran mentioned it to some elder villagers, their reaction changed everything. One old man went silent for a moment. Then he said something chilling. 30 years ago, a woman had fallen into that well and died. Some villagers believe that on certain nights, she calls people by their names. Imran's family moved out of the house 2 weeks later. And according to locals, even today, sometimes at 2 a.m., someone's name is heard, coming from the well. Story 2: The Locked Room. In 2017, a university student named Sadia moved into an apartment in Karachi with her cousin. The apartment looked normal, clean, affordable, perfect for 2 students. But there was one strange rule the landlord mentioned. One of the rooms in the apartment was always locked. The landlord told them, "Just leave that room closed. It's an old storage room." At first, they didn't care. They had 2 other rooms and the rent was cheap. But a few weeks later, something strange started happening. Around 3 a.m. every night, Sadia began hearing sounds. Footsteps. Slow footsteps. Thunk, thunk, thunk. At first, she thought someone upstairs was walking, but the sound was too close. It was coming from inside the apartment, more specifically from the locked room. One night, her cousin heard it too. Both of them stood outside the door, listening. The footsteps were clear. Someone was definitely walking inside, but the door was still locked from the outside. The next day, they called the landlord. When he arrived, he seemed nervous. Slowly, he unlocked the door. The door creaked open, and inside, the room was completely empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing. But on the floor, There were long scratch marks, as if something heavy had been dragged across the floor. The landlord looked disturbed. Finally, he admitted something he had never told them before. 3 years earlier, a tenant had taken his own life in that room. After that incident, people started hearing footsteps at night. Sadia and her cousin moved out within a week, but according to other residents, every time someone new rents that apartment, the footsteps return, always at 3 a.m. Story 3: The Woman on the Highway. In 2015, a truck driver named Rashid was driving through a quiet highway in Sindh late at night. It was around 1:30 a.m. The road was completely empty. No cars, no lights, just darkness stretching for miles. Then suddenly, he saw someone standing on the side of the road. A woman. She was wearing white clothes and waving for help. Rashid slowed down and stopped the truck. The woman opened the passenger door and quietly sat inside. Her long hair covered most of her face. Softly, she said, "Please, drop me at the next village." Rashid nodded and started driving. But after a few minutes, something felt strange. The air inside the truck felt colder. In the rear-view mirror, Rashid tried to look at her face, but he couldn't see it clearly. Her hair completely covered it. Trying to start a conversation, he asked, "What are you doing out here so late?" The woman replied slowly, "I live here." A few minutes later, Rashid glanced at the mirror again, and his heart nearly stopped. The passenger seat was empty. The woman was gone. The truck was still moving. The doors were still closed. No one had opened them. Rashid slammed the brakes and jumped out of the truck. The highway was silent. No one was there. The next morning, he told the story at a roadside tea stall. Everyone listening suddenly became quiet. An old man finally spoke. Years ago, a woman had died in a terrible accident on that highway. Since then, truck drivers sometimes see a woman asking for a ride, and after a few minutes, she disappears right from the passenger seat. Pakistan is full of mysteries, stories that never make the news, stories that people only whisper about. Maybe these are just coincidences. Maybe they are just stories. But if that's true, why do so many people describe the exact same experiences? And if they're not just stories, then what exactly is happening on these roads, in these houses, and in these forgotten places after midnight? If you have ever experienced something strange or unexplained, share your story in the comments, because your story might be the next one we tell.